Hi, God bless you. Today I'd like to talk to you about something that's very important, especially right now at this time in the family, and that is about your tithing. You know, tithing is a really important thing, and it's important because it blesses in three different ways. It blesses TFI and all of its members through the services, the spiritual feeding, things along those lines. It blesses the mission because through your tithes we're able to support missionaries, we're able to produce things that they can use for the mission work. And it blesses you because God blesses those who give. Maria and I want to thank each of you for your tithings, for your gifts, for all that you've given over the years throughout your whole life, and not just your tithing, but your lives themselves. You've served Him, you've given 110%. You've just been really, really wonderful, and we're so very thankful for you. And the finances that you've given, whether you're giving or whether you're tithing, has really, really made a difference. It's made a difference in the world. It's made a difference in the mission. And through it, you've made a difference. Now, Marie and I don't really talk much about tithing, about your giving, like a lot of other churches and a lot of other organizations do. I was once talking to somebody who's a preacher, and he told me that the tithing in his church was going down, so the mother church or the mother company came in and said, "Do you want us to kind of do a program? We can go around and talk to every single member and ask them about their income and how much they're giving and kind of try to negotiate with them and work it out." And the guy said, no, I'll do that myself. I'll take care of it. And so he did. He actually got in there and he talked about how much money they made, how much should they be giving, what's their 10%, will you pledge it? They wrote it down, they signed on it, and then they had envelopes and he could check every week. And that's how actually a lot of churches do it. They're very, well, they know that they need the funds and it's people giving to God and they're trying to help them. Well, we haven't done that because for all of these years, we've known that you've given your whole life to the Lord. And also, on top of it, your 10%. You knew the principles. It's not like somebody had to come and kind of beat you over the head about tithing and about giving. You knew that was what God expected, and you did it. And it's made a huge difference in the world. And we're very, very grateful for all of that you've given through all your life in the family. But like I said, we didn't think it was necessary because you understand what the principles are. Now, the fact that we don't talk about it, that we haven't, asked you to tell us your income and all of that we haven't written regular prayer letters or tithe letters or things and bringing it up all the time. The fact that we don't do that doesn't mean that we don't need the money. We, in fact, really, really do. To start with, our only income every month is just your tithes and givings. TFI doesn't have other revenue streams. It's you giving to God, and that's what makes the difference. That's what allows us to be able to serve you. And when I say us, I don't just mean Maria and me, but all of TFIS and everyone who does what they do to help serve you and to try to help you in your spiritual life and in your mission work. But since the reboot, the income of the family to TFI has dropped 50%. Okay, now that's a huge drop for us. And that really makes a difference in what we can and can't do. And it's not like the population of the family dropped 50%. That's not the case. But it's just that giving has been less. People are giving less. And it's making a pretty serious difference at this time. We've, over this past year, have kind of just started cutting things, kind of behind the scenes things that wouldn't be so noticeable. We've tried to trim it down, like Dad used to say, well, cut the fat. Well, it really wasn't much fat, but we cut every little tiny bit of fat there is, and even some meat. And now we're getting to where we're going to have to start cutting off major things if this doesn't change, if income doesn't rise. If it continues this way even for a couple more months, we're just going to have to start cutting kind of more vital services, which we're loath to do because all of the services at this point, they really serve you, they serve the mission, people need the things that they get. And cutting them off now those things is going to start hurting pretty big. Now, I think you remember that all through the family, until the reboot, tithing was required. I mean, that was just a requirement. Tithing 10% was expected, it was required. At the reboot, we wanted to kind of loosen things up, and we said, okay, you don't have to tithe 10%. You don't have to tithe. You can give. You can tithe or give, but you have to give something. And so that was a change. We also said that you could tithe, that a member could tithe to another member. Now, when we did that, here's what we had in mind. I think you'll remember that before the reboot, there was active members, and there were like their pastors or their shepherds. The active members were members, but they didn't tithe to WS, they tithed to their shepherds. And when we made these changes, the rules would be that those active members who would now become full members would have to tithe to TFI, and the shepherds who were discipling them and feeding them and stuff would lose that tithe. And we didn't want that to happen. We really wanted the people who were doing the job, who were discipling people and winning people, to be able to get income from that. So we said, okay, if someone is pastoring you, if someone is feeding you and spiritually, taking care of you and ministering to you and all of that, you can tithe to them. And that was the intent. And we thought it was very fair, because these guys were doing the job. If they were going to take care of those people, if they were doing the mission and feeding, that they deserved to get that tithe. So we made that change. That was a good thing, and we were actually quite happy about it. But that's not exactly how it's played out over the years. And I think it's maybe partly because perhaps you misunderstood the intent. What's happened now is that, as we know, that lots of people tithe to each other, but they're not tithing to the people who are spiritually feeding them or who are pastoring them or who are discipling them. They're tithing to others. Now, I'm sure the others really appreciate it, and I'm quite sure they need it. But the intent wasn't just to give to whoever. It wasn't to give to your friends or give, to somebody that you've known for a long time, or to give to your relatives. It wasn't, the intent wasn't that people would write and say, oh, I'm doing a project, could you please tithe to me? Or, hey, I started a foundation, can you stop tithing to TFI and start tithing to my foundation instead? Well, I'm sure all those people need that money, and those foundations need it, and all the rest. But really, your tithe, we really need it. And we need it because we're ministering to you, and because we're trying to feed you spiritually. But even more than that, we're trying to help you and others to do the mission and to get out there and really be able to do it. And we want to be able to supply you what you need for that. So while we thought it was worthwhile for people to be able to tithe to those who are spiritually feeding them and not to TFI, we really didn't expect and really didn't mean for everybody just to kind of be tithing to, to here or there, because when you do that, it makes it less possible for us to be able to help you and to help others. And if it doesn't change pretty quick, like I said, we're going to have to let some services go, and there'll be some big services, and we're not really sure which ones they're going to have to be. We're hoping it doesn't come to that. But see, what happens is once we make those kind of cuts, then those things that go will never come back, because the people who do those things, who have families, who have children, who have to eat food and have to have a roof over their heads. Well, once we say, well, the service that you provide is we can't do it anymore, then these good, loving, qualified people are going to move on and do other things. And if 3 or 4 months down the road we say, oh, great, we can start that service up again, the trained people are not going to be available anymore, and that's going to be a loss. It'll be kind of a permanent loss. And Marie and I are actually very, very concerned about this. People who work for you, that work in TFIS, they really sacrifice. It's not like anybody's working for the money, but they see it as their service to the Lord, as their service to the family, and they're really marvelous people. And honestly, they're good, trained, capable people that it will be very, very hard to replace. And as I said, most likely what will happen is those ministries or those things will be gone and gone for good. And some of them are, all of them actually are quite vital. Okay, the tithing, between members is about 30% of our members do that. That means 30% of family members tithe to others and don't give towards TFI. In looking at the stats and all, it's pretty apparent that all 30% of those people, or all the 30%, aren't tithing to people who are spiritually feeding them. They're tithing to others, and so so that's been a problem. But it's not the only problem. Another problem is that a lot of people who report is that they're tithing don't actually seem to be tithing, or at least not tithing 10%. There's a lot of people in Western countries like Europe, North America, that are tithing like $3, $4, $5, maybe up to $10. And well, there may be some widow's mite type situations of people that are giving, and that's really all that they have to give, and that's all, that's really 10% of your income. And if you're in that situation, we are very thankful that you give anything at all, because we know that that's really hard to do when you have so little. But again, that doesn't seem like that's the situation with everybody. And I think some people just go, well, I'll give, or I'll say I'm tithing, but really I'm not really getting much for it. I don't like some of the services, or I don't think they're good enough, or I don't think there's enough of them. It's not like working for me. I don't get enough for it. Well, the thing about tithing is not about what you're getting for it. It's not like, well, I pay this and I get that. It's not like I'm paying my taxes so I get good roads, or I'm doing, it's not that. It's not quid pro quo. It's not getting something for what you give. It's actually you giving to God. It's your commitment to give to God, and then to trust Him for the outcome of that money. Now, we honestly, and I can say this with complete honesty, we have tried to use every penny of family money in good causes and in frugally to do things that benefit the family. Nobody's getting rich off of it. There's no big money. We're spending every penny now that we get. In fact, we're actually spending a little more than we get because we want to keep things going. And it's really tight. Nobody's making money. Nobody's being selfish. We cut things to the bone. We're not in it for the money. We're in it for you. We're in it for God. We're in it for the mission. So, and we try our very, very best to be very wise and to stretch out each euro, each yen, each peseta or whatever it is. We really try to do it, and to be good with it and to use it wisely. But the fact of the matter is there's getting less and less of it. You can only stretch it so far, and pretty soon, very soon, it's going to be critical. It already is actually critical. But we're trying to stretch it out a little bit more in the hopes that you will understand about the tithe, will understand, sort of get re-envisioned about your giving, because it is needed. It's needed for the mission. And I think when it comes time for you to tithe at the end of the month, you should kind of think about, like, okay, what am I doing here? What is this all about? Am I just trying to get something? Am I even just trying to get something from God? Or am I actually using my tithe as a show of obedience to God, to the Lord, or as a show of my gratefulness for what He's done? As a show of my understanding that He's asked me to tithe, to give, and yes, that also there's blessings involved. Instead of just thinking, well, here's my money and I don't like giving it. The Scripture talks about being a cheerful giver. Scripture talks about giving out of the abundance of your heart. Okay? And when it comes time to tithe, when it comes time to give, you should really look at it as a time like, I'm doing something here for God. I'm giving this to the Lord. This is, what the Lord has asked me, and I cheerfully give it to Him because I love Him, and because He loves me, and because He saved your soul, and because you have eternity ahead with Him. It's a small price to pay. to give to him, and knowing that giving to him causes the mission to happen, causes other people to be able to receive the Lord. I mean, I think when you sit down to tithe, you should realize, well, I'm giving to God, I'm also blessing others. That my funds, the funds that I turn in, are going to help those who maybe have less to give or nothing to give to still be able to get the word, to still be able to receive mission products. I think you should start looking at it like, I'm helping missionaries. I'm helping people to get fed. I think you should say, wow, I'm helping, or in fact, I'm translating into 20-something languages. I'm helping the children to be fed through this website or that website. I'm helping the activated mag to get out. Because you actually are doing those things because you are giving, because you are tithing. And it's just, as I said earlier, it just really makes a big difference. And it's not just a requirement, but it's something from your heart. And that heart gift helps others. It blesses others. It blesses the family. It blesses the mission, and it blesses you. Now, I've talked about tithing, and I've avoided giving because I really want to challenge you to tithe 10%. Now, you might be in a situation and you're thinking, I don't really have the money. I don't see how I can do it. Well, honestly, I don't see how you can't do it. God's blessings are there. When you give, you receive. I was looking up some verses. I was going to go down a litany of tithe verses and say, you got to tithe, you got to tithe. But I came across one verse that I thought expressed it best, or at least the way I wanted to express it. And it's this verse. It's Luke 6:38. And it says, if it was Jesus speaking, and he says, give and you shall receive. Okay, that's a starter. He says, your gift will return to you in full, pressed down, shaken together, running over. And I've seen that verse. That's a different translation than I normally use. But I've seen that verse, and I thought, I never kind of got it. But I was looking it up, and I looked it up, what does this mean? What's that mean? What's the Greek for this word? Just for fun. And the picture is this. It's sort of like, you've given, and now you have a bag, like one of those canvas bags, and you have it on your lap, and it's got some grain in it that you've been giving out. And then here comes the Lord. And he has his big thing of grain over here, and he's scooping it into your bag, right? And so he's putting it in, and then he says, hey, shake it, put your hand in there and push it down, like press it together, like get it down there so there's more and more room, and I'll keep pouring in. And then it goes on to say that he's pouring it, and then it gushes over the top, and it goes down on your lap. I mean, it's just overflowing, and it's gushing down on you. And he said, and the end of this verse says, the amount you give will determine the amount you get back. And I thought, whoa, now that is a good picture. And that's what tithing is about. You're giving to the Lord. And you're going to get it back. And you're not doing it to get it back, but you just do in God's blessings. It's one of those principles. If you tithe, he takes care of you. It may not be in money, and you may be kind of looking for those kind of blessings, but I've learned over the years to kind of think in terms of God's blessings oftentimes being the things that don't happen. The times I almost get in a car accident, or I kind of fall but don't hurt myself, or all of those kind of things where you just know the Lord is taking care of you. And you just know that that's God, and you feel, at least I feel like, well, the Lord is taking care of me. He just saved me a medical bill. He just saved me fixing my car. The least I can do is give to him. The least I can do is to make that commitment to tithe. And I'd like to ask you to do the same thing. Now, if you can't tithe, then there's reasons, and there are reasons sometimes, and people have prayed and asked the Lord, and they've kind of worked it out with the Lord. Well, then give. But whether you tithe or whether you give from your heart. Give generously. And I'd say even when you tithe, there's other people who need funds too. So give gifts and offerings to others. Be generous, because when you're generous, God will bless you, okay? Now, as I said, we're really in kind of a desperate situation, and we really need you to tithe. Okay, so I'm just asking you. This morning I was in my room and I was thinking about giving this talk, and I was praying, and I thought, Maria and I are pretty desperate about this. We don't want to let services go. We don't want to do anything that will cause less mission to happen, but that's a possibility. And I thought, well, maybe I should just, tell the cameraman, listen, I'm going to get down here on my knees and I'm just going to beg you to give. And, I'm not too proud to do that. I was really thinking about doing that. And when I prayed about it, the Lord said, you don't really need to do that. He said, everybody in TFI understands the principle of tithing. They kind of need to be reminded of it. They need to be reminded that I bless them, that I will bless them, that I have, given them so much and I will continue to do so, and that they have eternity with me in heaven. And they just need to be reminded, and they'll give. He said, don't make such a big deal out of it, because it's not really between, me and you, but it's between you and him. And he's asking, okay? And he'll bless you. And it will go to a good purpose. And it may be a sacrifice, because it is hard to take, your hard-earned money and send it in. But that's nothing compared to what God can give back and what God will give back when you give. He loves you. He wants to take care of you. But sometimes he asks things of you. He asks for your obedience. He asks for, you to do what his word says. And in this case, he asks that you tithe 10%, and that you give it willingly and openly, that you give from your heart, joyously and cheerfully, and that he will then in turn give to you. So if you want his blessings, more of his blessings, please really consider it. Please pray about it. And don't just let it be like 1 month and it's like, well, I watched that video, it's really on my heart. But make a real commitment, like now, and that I am going to tithe. No matter what, I'm going to tithe. And then I'm going to stand back and watch what God does in my life. And I know he'll bless you. Okay? Thanks so much. We really, really love you. I wanted to say one last thing, and that is a great big thank you to those of you who tithe. We're very, very grateful, and there's many of you who do. I didn't want to give the impression that nobody is. Many of you do, and we're just grateful for it. And many of you not only tithe, but you also give over and beyond that. You give to other missionaries. You give to family members that are in need. You even give to TFIS, knowing that we don't have the funds for all the services. And that's just been such a blessing. So thank you. We really, really thank you. I thank you too on behalf of Maria. We're just very grateful for all that you do and all that you give. And we're thankful for every one of you. We just love you to pieces. God bless you.